There is an incredible hack that I've been looking into, and I'm going to share it with you if you're open to attracting a member of the opposite sex. What I'm about to give to you might not necessarily be tangible, and you might not necessarily be able to picture it in your mind, so I'll describe it in the best way I can. If you're someone who's constantly seen a lot of manifestation topics or videos, then you might have heard the phrase that you need to assume things, or you might have heard about the law of assumption. And if you've read a lot of material around this, you might typically try to convert the negative into a positive, in a sense. You might typically try to visualize the opposite of something despite the contradictive evidence in front of you. And for some time, this can feel very disheartening if the reality that you're desiring so much isn't coming into fruition. So you kind of go back to the drawing board and you keep on trying to figure out like what the hell went wrong, and you get burnt out because you can't figure out the real mechanics, and everyone's telling you the same kind of advice. Even if you scroll on social media, you look it up, you can't find any of the real gold nuggets. So what I'm about to share with you is kind of going to destroy or recreate what it means to assume something. So if you read Neville Goddard's literature, his books, he will go into what assuming means, what it means to create an assumption. And by recollection, I think he just means like deep visualizations. You do want to expect good things as your default mode. That should be ideal. And if you've read other perhaps New Thought Christian material on how to get rich, such as Napoleon Hill's book, How to Think and Grow Rich, or The Science of Being Great, you might see that they often talk about having this burning desire. But there is another book I want to bring your attention to, and it's called The Four Agreements by Don Ruiz. I don't personally know a lot about the author, but his book is fantastic, and it's a very short and simple read. And it touches on a lot of the same type of concepts, but it kind of looks at it in a slightly different way. And it says you must never assume. Now, when you hear that, it kind of sounds like it's going against everything about Neville Goddard and all the other manifestation stuff, right? But I want you to instead realize that what it means to assume something, in a sense, usually, is to accuse. Now, I want you to just picture this. There's a spectrum. On the left here, we have assume, and on the far right of the spectrum, we have accuse. Both of these things are technically the same thing. When you accuse someone of being an avoidant, you accuse someone of neglecting your needs, you accuse someone of doing the wrong thing, of having a negative character, of being hostile, you accuse someone of not being capable of being loved, etc. You accuse someone of being defensive. This happened to me recently. You accuse someone of being defensive and justifying themselves. Essentially, what you're doing is you're painting a picture in your mind of the other person, of the other party, and this picture that you have, that you're painting, it is either negative in the form of an accusation, or it is positive in the form of an assumption. The problem is, both of those things are technically exactly the same thing. And this is the part that is kind of a struggle for me to even wrap my head around and convey to you. So I'm really trying to find the right words here. There is a balance or an antithesis to these extremities, and because both of those things are opposites of each other in the sense, even though they're the same thing, but there is an antithesis. There is a middle ground here. If you've ever seen the rabbit and the duck image, you should Google that and you'll know what I'm talking about. The whole idea is that if you want to change things, if you want to change the image, what you've been doing essentially with either the accusation or the assumption is that you're trying to change the external reality. That's what the assumption you're doing is. That's what you're assuming. You're trying to change the external reality. Same with the accusation. You're kind of making up the external reality is a way that might not really be. And so this anti-mirror, this antithesis between the two extremities, is we actually need to change the way we see the other person. We don't change. We do not change the other person. We change the way we see that person. So the image, the painting that we see in our head, we need to change not the image that we see in our head, but rather we need to change the way we see the image that's in our head, if that makes sense. Wherever you're at in your life, you're probably going to find whatever gold nugget that has come across your journey, and you're going to probably stick with that. But for me, this is a massive gold nugget that I came to this realization by just looking at anti-mirrors. An anti-mirror is a mirror within a mirror. It's basically opposite thinking and looking at the laws of the universe in a sense, mainly the cause and effect law of the universe, a hermetic principle, which is technically, God's principles. Now, I am becoming much more active and conscious of trying to change the way I see the image. So we don't try to change the image itself. We change the way we see the image. And this is why I mentioned the duck and the rabbit thing, because for a long time, you can kind of get the idea behind the rabbit and the duck thing, but it might not really land with you until maybe years later, if you've really tried to understand it and you couldn't. Maybe 3 years later down the track, it might kind of click a little bit, like maybe it did for me when I made this association. So it's basically like this. There is a fact, F-A-C-T, fact. Make it plural, facts. We can't change the facts, but what we can change is the way we see the facts. This is where the famous analogy of asking whether that glass is half full or half empty comes into play, because the fact is that the glass is 50% full analytically. And that is true. It is also true that it is half empty. It is also true that it is half full. It is true that it is good, and it is true that it is bad. It is true that it may be sufficient, and it is true that it may not be sufficient. So if someone that you love romantically has treated you harshly in the past, whether it's a family member or someone you are romantically interested in, if you want to be on good terms with them, you have to let go of whatever it is that you were looking at. Like, you have to stop seeing the image in that way and change the way you see that person. You have to change the way you see them. Are they a human or are they a monster? Are they a narcissist or are they human? Are they broken or are they a galaxy? And yes, they might have done some extremely disproportionate things. But I want to give you one more incredible principle that can help make this a little easier. And this is something I'm still experimenting with, so you'll just have to bear with it. See if it works for you. You may have heard the phrase, what you focus on expands. And there is a formula that I have kind of found this to be true. The formula is I see, like you see the image, you affirm the image, and then the image expands naturally because you affirm it. So basically, wherever you see, if you see the image in this way, you're kind of affirming that the image exists, and then basically it expands that way. Kind of like those TikTok videos where the guy keeps zooming in, Basically, where you put your attention, where you see, that is what expands. So very naturally, extremely naturally, if you're constantly thinking that they're an avoidant anxious attachment style, or a narcissist, or a borderline personality disorder, or whatever they are, naturally, that's true. Your brain is going to keep on expanding that because it's true. But if you just ask yourself, what makes that person special? Why do I feel safe with that person? Instead of the opposite. If you look for the reason, the causes as to why this is true, you will start to find them because your attention is making it grow and expand. An effect cannot exist without a cause. An event cannot exist without a reason.